Welcome back, everybody, to the Aurora Show. And we are going to complete, well, at least this part of the series of the rising signs. And we're going to do Pisces rising today. So, Pisces risings. The final, whichever way you look at it, the final zodiac sign, the first zodiac sign, it kind of sums up Pisces because so Pisces, right? I talked about this before, but ancient ruler was Jupiter. Modern ruler is Neptune. And these are different energies, right? So the ancient ruler of Jupiter, right? She's blessings, expansion. She is a benefic. She is typically seen as, an area of life where we seek to expand. We seek growth. This is where we tend to have faith, optimism, right? And that you can see that a lot with the Sagittarius element. That's why I said Sagittariuses always seem to have luck in life, although they're not always lucky. That's kind of a myth, but I look at Sagittarius as the ultimate type B personality, right? They are not planning anything. They're not overthinking things. They're kind of just going with the flow, trusting in the universe. And they're it'll work out. And it's because it's about belief, right? The Sagittarius beliefs are what shapes their reality. And so depending on what they believe and what their personal truth is, that is what they tend to experience in the world. Now, the ancient ruler of Pisces was also Jupiter, but we do have a different archetype in Pisces. So Jupiter would have expressed herself differently there, right? Sagittarius is the kind of blend of it's a centaur and a human. So you kind of get this blend of it's a very multi-dimensional type of human, right? It's the bow and arrow. So they're always kind of focused on the higher perspective. They're focused on a big picture. They have a goal. They have something they're seeking in life, but how they get there is not always a straight arrow, right? But ultimately, they are very kind of relentless, where they're seeking something in life, whether that be experiences, whether that be a higher truth. They're trying to form their personal truth about the world, right? Now in Pisces is traditionally a very spiritual archetype, right? It's a water sign. It's a mutable water sign. So here is where we get this idea of oneness. We get this idea that we are part of the world. We are part of the cosmos. Everything is connected with Pisces, right? And so this kind of makes sense where it's Pisces is the everything. It's the fucking melting pot, okay? It's the cosmic soup. Nothing is black and white there. Nothing is clear cut, right? There's a multitude of perspectives. There's a multitude of truths. There's paradoxes that live within Pisces. Naturally, it is the cosmic waters of the all, right? So it is a very kind of spiritual archetype here. And I think with Jupiter as the ancient ruler, it would have shown up as this, we're seeking to not only expand in our life experiences and in our personal truths and beliefs and, the moral compass that guides us, which is Sagittarius. But I think Jupiter would have expressed herself as the ruler of Pisces, where we're not just seeking that, we're seeking oneness with creation. We're seeking to return to that feeling, right? That sense of everything is connected. There's unconditional love. There's empathy. There's this sense that you are at the right place at the right time, that everything is divinely orchestrated, right? It goes deeper than just a personal truth. It is a faith that is kind of in things way beyond ourselves, right? But I do feel, of course, that when Neptune, right, was discovered in the 1850s and it became the modern ruler of Pisces, the archetype shifted, right? And so in the time period that Neptune was discovered, Like old school astrologers will refer to Neptune as the counterculture. That Neptune shifts create counterculture movements, basically because it comes after Uranus, right? And Uranus is the rebel with a cause. And so Neptune, to me, is the tone of the collective, the mood of the collective, right? The vibe. And this is why when you look at each generation and the generational planets, you will especially notice that wherever each generation has Neptune, this is the vibe of the generation. This is the mood that they naturally carry. And so it's a lot about vision. It's a lot about what is our vision of the world? What is our ideal experience in the world? And so Neptune does have an idealistic connotation to it. And so this whole idea of counterculture movements, right, was about going against the current culture and kind of creating something that was very different. And I think that we can definitely say that is Neptunian, right? And I think the reason it's Neptunian is not because Neptune herself is about counterculture, but because when she shifts signs, the vibe shifts. So whatever's been normalized, if you will, this is how I modernly interpret Neptune. So she is about spirituality. She is about the connection to something greater than ourselves. We have to feel. Oops. Sorry. So we have to feel connected to a higher vision. We have to feel like there is something greater than ourselves, right? That is a lot of our motivation. But when Neptune shifts in different signs, she creates a different mood. It's a planet of mood, right? And tone. And so this is why when Neptune shifts, whatever's been normalized in the culture thus far, whatever's been normalized as this is how society is, this is how things work, Neptune brings in a new vision. And this is where we get counterculture. It's because there are cultural shifts every time she moves, right? Now, the shadows of Neptune that have now been integrated into the Piscean archetype. And again, I don't know if 500 years ago, the Pisces archetype would have operated differently because Jupiter was its ruler and only ruler. It's very possible. But currently we do, if you have a lot of Pisces energy, or especially if you're a Pisces rising, you are going to have to take on now the shadows of this new rulership. And the shadows of Neptune can be that there's too much wishy-washiness. There's too much fluidness, right? Because when we get too much fluidness, we have no sense of boundaries. We cannot differentiate fantasy and delusion from reality. And again, we just had a whole 16-year era with Neptune and Pisces, right? And that brought up a lot of these questions, like what is reality? What is real and what is not? Like what is lies? What is illusion? What is this a simulation, right? Like it brought up all these questions because Neptune now being the ruler, it's too open. It's too open-ended, right? It's like sentences without periods. They just, a run-on sentence, if you will. That's kind of like what Neptune and Pisces are now, is one thing just kind of flows into the other, into the other, into the other. There's no sense of finality. There's no sense of ending or beginning. There's no sense of what is real. And I think reality is what you experience. I think personal experience is a huge part of reality, which is, yes, why we all live in different realities, right? We understand Neptune and Pisces is consciousness. So whatever your consciousness is, that is what you will experience in the world. That is what your quote unquote reality will be. And I think through the Neptune and Pisces era, our job was to disentangle and unpack all of the falsities, whether that be ego programmings, conditionings, lies that we've been told, right? Misinformations, psyops, all these different things. We had to disentangle and unpack all of that so that we could get to the realist reality that we could, where we're not subconsciously creating these distortions. And so this is where I think this rising sign in particular is a challenging one, because your story arc is very muddled, if you will. And I think the most important thing for Pisces risings, and those of you that have major Piscean placements, is blending that sense of oneness, that sense of where you feel everything all at once, right? You are a signal that is tuned into many different radio stations. Use that for the higher, right? It's creative, it's imaginative, it's empathetic. There's a beauty to Pisces because it transcends logic. And we need less logic in the world. We need more etherealism. We need more intuitiveness. We need more abstractness, where not everything is so logical and analytical. That is the beauty of Pisces. The danger is that you can get lost in a fantasy and a delusion that has no bearings in reality. You cannot see things clearly to where you're swimming in the cosmic soup, but there's no sense of self in it. There's no sense of, vision. And so I think that this is just like I said with Aquarius risings. I think transparency and authenticity is the name of the game, is the key to your archetype being brought properly to the world. And I think with Pisces risings, you have to have a vision. What is your vision for the collective? What is your vision of the new world, right? And you have to have discernment, right? And so if you don't have a vision, if you lack your own piece of the personal vision, and also I think Pisces risings do need to delve a lot into spirituality, into discovering not only, right? Remember, Pisces bleeds into Aries. Everything bleeds into the next. So we have to have this sense of oneness, this sense of overall vision, this connection to spirit, right? To things beyond this realm. But we also have to have a sense of self within that, okay? Because if you don't have that vision, and it's not a clear vision, and you don't have discernment, and you haven't cultivated your spirit to be grounded, to be discerning, to be anchored into the body, you will get pulled into other people's fantasies very easily. You will get pulled into other people's visions, and you will lose yourself in the process. Okay, so your first house ruled by Neptune, right? Your first house is Pisces. You have a very permeable aura. Okay. So as you're walking around the world, you're kind of experiencing the world as a dream. And that's not a bad thing. You are immersed in the dream. You are immersed in the magic, in the unknown, but your aura is extremely permeable. Okay. So what this means is you need to have very clear boundaries with people around you. You need to have very clear boundaries between what is you and what is others, so that you can think of your auric field, your first house, right, as a very open aura. Okay, that aura needs to be cleansed regularly, however you choose to do that. That aura needs to spend time alone sometimes to get really clear on, okay, what is me and what is the rest of the world? What do I believe? What is my vision? And what am I just absorbing and picking up from others? There needs to be a sense of boundary there sometimes. You also have to be careful, right, of people will pull on your heartstrings. Pisces is super empathetic. Be careful of being pulled in to other people's kind of victimhoods, or remember I talked about this with one of the other risings, but Pisces and Virgo energy can go into savior complexes. You want to avoid that. You want to feel very alive, very rich, and very clear in your auric field, right? Now, your second house of how you manifest into the world, your sense of self-worth, how you draw money, resources, right, to yourself. This is in Aries. So the irony here is that people might find you very confusing, again, because Neptune and Pisces have this sort of vagueness to them. It's like abstract art, right? We don't really know what it's supposed to represent. It's up to the interpreter, right? It's kind of that quantum physics theory of the observer actually changes what is being observed, right? So technically what is being observed is malleable based on the observer. That is kind of like being a Pisces rising. Depending on who is viewing you, on who is interacting with you, it is up to the interpreter. And so this is why I say cultivate a sense of self. It is okay to have a sense of self within the oneness. But if you don't have a sense of self, then again, what's going to happen? People are going to project whatever they observe about you, which again, you're like a cosmic antenna. You're often emanating things that are just around you. They're from the collective. Like you are a very malleable sponge. So if who you are, this is kind of Libra rising coded as well. Although Libra risings is more, it's a mirror. So a lot of what people see in the Libra rising is actually themselves. But with Pisces, people will project. Remember, Pisces and Neptune rule the subconscious. They rule the 12th house. People will project their subconscious onto you because the observer is changing what's being observed. And if you're not careful, you will become that projection. Okay, so your second house of self-worth becomes very, very important because it's ruled by Aries. So your self-worth, how you manifest in the world, how you bring yourself resources is Aries based. You got to be very, very clear on what you're worth. You have to be very, very clear on who you are. And ultimately, as part of your manifestation and abundance and how you bring things to yourself, it is about action, which again is hard because Pisces is about receiving. Pisces is about being open and simply seeing what comes to it. But in the realm of your self-worth and your resources, you are going to have to demand what you're worth. You are going to have to be the one who is self-sufficient, who takes action, who makes decisions, who is decisive, who knows who they are. Otherwise, that area might not flow properly, okay? Now, your third house of communication is Taurus. Love this. I think that you have a very practical way of viewing life. You might, and this actually is very beneficial for Pisces risings because Taurus in the third house means that you'll often sit on things for a while. You'll sit on ideas for a while. You will only communicate and share things after you've really felt into them, integrated them. And so your form of communication is actually very grounded and solid. Now, one of the issues with that is that you can become very stubborn. And again, this kind of Pisces is a paradox. So everything about this story arc is going to be paradoxical. Okay. That's just your nature. The paradox is that you're this flowy, easygoing, malleable, kind of mystical, abstract person, but you're very stubborn in your way of thinking, and you can be very stubborn in your communications. Okay, so what you want to do is not be so stubborn because that's actually going to clash with the first house of your natural state. But you do want to take the time to be very grounded in your thinking and in your communications, which means you take some extra time, right? To really feel into things. Does it align with you? Is this my own thought? Is this other people's thoughts, right? How do I really feel about this? This makes your communication actually extremely grounded. This also means that a lot of the ideas that you have and when you communicate, you have a great way of being able to manifest things in the world through your words. So be very careful about your words, which you will be anyways with the Taurus there. But what I mean is affirmations, mantras, speaking things into existence could be very powerful for you. Now, the fourth house of home and family, first angular house, right? This is going to be ruled by Gemini. So this tells us that growing up, maybe you grew up in a very fast-paced household. Gemini is very fast-paced. So this could be either A, your family moved around a lot because Gemini struggles to stay in one place, or there was a Gemini can also rule siblings. Maybe there was a lot of siblings or a lot of cousins or a lot of there was just a lot of people around. It always felt like there was a lot of activity. There was a lot of things being said. There was a lot of communications. And so part of you might really enjoy that. As you grow up and you create your own sense of home and family, you might love to be at home and you love to have people over, right? You like to socialize at home, if that makes sense. And you also might be used to having a very kind of chaotic, noisy, home situation. It just always felt like there was a little bit of chaos happening sometimes. But you also might find that maybe there was communication issues growing up, right? Like people were just saying things that weren't true. Gemini can be a little bit flippity floppity. So maybe it was just things were unclear. Maybe there was lies. People were just saying things, but you weren't really clear on the communication. And so this might be where you lean into that Taurus third house where it's no, I want to be very grounded and very clear in my communications because I grew up in this kind of a little bit of a chaotic household. But again, the beauty of this is that your internal state is actually very mentally active. You have a lot of ideas. You have a lot of things to share. It might just be hard with the Pisces first house to express them clearly. And this is where the Taurus third house comes in. You need to integrate your ideas and your thoughts into your body. So when you actually do communicate, when you express, it is in resonance. Your body, your brain, your heart, they're all in resonance, right? This will help avoid miscommunications that often happen with a Pisces first house because the nature is just so wishy-washy. Nobody's understanding. Okay. This could also help where you write things down. That a Gemini fourth house would do really well with that. Journal, write things down. This is one way to integrate all of that into the body, right? But you're really good with navigating and being flexible. You're really flexible, really adaptable. And that is what is kind of a superpower for you. Now, your fifth house of joy, self-expression, what lights you up in life, right? This is ruled by Cancer. So a lot of Pisces risings might feel really passionate and guided for the feminine about having children. They want to have a big family. They want to have children. They want to have a really beautiful, passionate home life. So you also might find you spend a lot of your creative energy on maybe decorating your home the way you want it. Maybe you have an at-home art studio or something like that, because Cancer is the home. There also might be that you're very masculine or feminine. You're very attracted to partners or relationships, right, that are kind of family oriented. You might end up wanting to date or be with people that also love children. You just really crave the passion, and the self-expression comes through in a very nurturing way. And that is a big part of your life. A big joy for you is having a sense of family, having a sense of a close unit. That makes you feel safe, right? Because that Gemini fourth house, there could have been just a little bit of chaos growing up. It just feels like a lot was always going on. And now you really want to find a little bit of peace and you kind of a sanctuary type of thing. Now, your sixth house of health and wellness, your daily routine, your work is ruled by Leo. So again, a lot of Pisces risings, I think, would do really well being in some type of creative or art space. So this could be fashion design, this could be singing, this could be performance, this could be designing. Especially some of you with that fifth house in Cancer, you might be very drawn to like feng shui or interior design, or even making products and services that are for children or for families. Maybe you really enjoy cooking. There's a lot in there, but your daily life and daily routine has to have joy in it, has to have creativity in it, and passion. And this goes kind of back to the Pisces first house, which is Pisces is the all. It's the all. So there's a lot of paradoxes here. Like you need quiet and you need peace and you really kind of crave that very grounded communications, but you also do really well with like fast activity and chaos. Like everything about your chart is paradoxical. Now, health and wellness wise, with Leo energy there, you want to really make sure you're constantly working on the heart chakra. Again, Gemini fourth house, your internal emotional body. You're often thinking about how you feel without actually feeling it. And so there can be a disconnect here. You're very empathic. You feel a lot of things. You absorb a lot of things, but sometimes it's not processing correctly, right? And so you want to really work on the heart chakra here, where you're constantly going through forgiveness. You're constantly going through healing of the heart, wherever you might have been hurt or felt betrayed or anything like that. Remember, Taurus third house, don't be stubborn in your way of thinking, right? Just because you have a narrative in your head doesn't mean that that's reality. Okay, Pisces first house, you as being the observer and the observed, it can get very confusing. Don't lock on to a particular story or narrative. Be open to perceiving other possibilities, right? Other people's perspectives. That will keep you open. That will keep you fluid. Now, your seventh house of relationships is in Virgo, which is, again, a total paradox here, because Virgo, so actually in relationships, you enjoy being in relationships that are very like structured. You also might be, Pisces is known to be very non-judgmental because they're very empathic. They really have a lot of compassion for others, especially those that are like suffering or have had like injustices. But actually in your relationships, you can be quite judgmental. And you almost kind of seek this idealistic, perfect relationship. And this is in all types of relationships, right? So you can be very critical of others that you have any sort of long-term relationship with. So you feel like you're so open and you're so, loving of everybody, but actually in long-term relationships, other people are feeling a little bit criticized, a little bit judged by you. And you're also, because you're seeking perfection, you're walking around in this auric field that is idealistic. And sometimes that's getting translated to relationships in which you want the idealistic relationship. You think everybody needs to be perfect. Everything needs to be done exactly how it should be done. And there's very little room here, actually, for others to make mistakes. Very little room for others to, go through a learning process. So I think that's an area where you can learn a lot. I think in one way, it's really good that you have relationships that are very structured, right? Virgo is the details. Make sure there's clarity of details in these relationships. There's clear communication. And ultimately, each partner wants to make the other better. They just want to make each other better. And that's a beautiful thing. Avoid being overly judgmental, avoid nitpickiness and criticisms, and also avoid relationships, again, where you're seeking to fix the partner. Or if it's not a partner, it could even be, right, any sort of long-term dynamic. But don't Don't stay in long-term relationships or dynamics of any kind where you feel like you have to save the other person, right? Where you have to fix them. And also for contractual purposes, make sure that you go over all the details very, very carefully. Now, your 8th house of the deep dive, right? Where we meet our angels and our demons, that's going to be in Libra. So you are a hopeless romantic. You can often get totally sucked in to romantic relationships or otherwise. And that can be very painful. Pisces deals with a lot of grief and sometimes a lot of loss. So this can indicate that a partner dies. This can indicate that there's an intense fear of the loss of a relationship, which causes you to actually attach. And Pisces has that melding quality. And the 8th house is where we quite literally meld with another. It's intimacy, it's vulnerability, right? It's a private house. So you can keep your relationships very, very private. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But relationships to you are a very private matter. But also you have to watch out for getting totally lost in them, having a fear of a relationship ending. And so you cling more. You give so much of yourself away that you completely lose yourself. I think here, when we're talking about wounds and triggers and traumas, a lot of it will stem from partnerships of any kind. You have to watch out, again, Virgo 7th house. If you have any contract in life, whether that is a physical signing on the dot contract, whether that's a verbal contract, whether that is a soul contract, you need to be very clear on the details of that, right? Taurus 3rd house, right? Take your time with making decisions. Libra 8th house, be very careful and watch out for contracts and relationships that are actually unequal and that could come back to betray you, or, you could lose a lot of money in an 8th house with Libra. So it's again, it comes back to the 1st house always. Boundaries. 2nd house of Aries, know who you are, know what you're worth, do not overextend, be careful of who comes into the auric field. You have to be a little particular with that. Okay. The beauty here, though, is that you have a very, very deep well of love for other people. You deeply care about other people. Cancer 5th house. And I think marriage is a very spiritual, very long-term thing for you. It is something that you are deeply invested in, and anybody that you have a long-term relationship with, you are deeply invested. You love from the bottom of your soul, and that again, that's a beautiful thing, but it does have to be guarded. Now, the 9th house of expansion and higher learning, and where we kind of seek a bigger life and life experiences, is Scorpio. And so part of what you're seeking in life, part of what you want to experience in life is that intensity. So you will often be attracted to very intense experiences. Again, Scorpio rules loss, death. You can have a lot of intense experiences in life. I think Pisces risings, again, because there is a spiritual connotation here. In the 9th house, you would do really well to invest your time and energy into learning and gaining wisdom and knowledge and studying anything that has to do with psychology, esotericness, somatic healing. That could be a great relief to you because it really helps work with that Pisces auric field. Okay. Now, your 10th house of where you kind of want to build a legacy. This is like a life mission. This is a long-term thing, right? That is ruled by Sagittarius. So actually, you might find that later in life is when you have more fun. You might have to do a lot of work up until later in life, which Capricorn 10th house is often like, it's where we achieve something that's very long term. We often don't find fulfillment in the 10th house till later in life, right? That's the nature of Capricorn. It's time. time and effort. But you also might find that it's really hard for you to stick to a career, or it's really hard for you to stick to one purpose, one mission, because Sagittarius is always on to the next thing. So I think here, your overall mission in life is like, you want to have experiences. You want to gain wisdom and knowledge. You want to have fun. Leo 6th house, your daily work, your daily routine. For you, it's about joy and it's about fun, right? And so you don't always have to stick to one thing. And I think as you get older, you will find you actually expand more and have a lot more fun. Pisces is the old soul. So it takes a while, but you aren't here for some like overarching, specific career, specific role. You're here to have all of the experiences. Now, again, Aries 2nd house, in order to be financially sustainable and to anchor in your self-worth, you can't just be in joy all the time. And it can't just be about joy and your family and your partner. Because Aries 2nd house, you cannot actually rely on a partner for your self-worth and for your finances. Aries is independent. So you do have to find where you are autonomous and you have to be financially independent in some way. Even though, again, paradoxically, the rest of the chart just wants to pull you into kind of just being this magical being who kind of like goes with the flow of life and has a big, big focus on relationships and children. But you have to find something for yourself. You have to build something for yourself as well. And 11th house, where you make an impact on the world, right? What you bring to the collective conscious. This is going to be Capricorn. So actually, you could build a great legacy. You could really build something sustainable, and it's going to be impactful to the world. Again, it might take time. Taurus, 3rd house, your ideas take time to come to fruition. Your legacy takes time to build. Your kind of fulfillment of your purpose in life does take time. And I think because Pisces is the old soul, this does happen a bit later in life. But you do have the ability to really build something long lasting that really has a great impact on the collective, is really something sustainable. And this brings us to the 12th house of Aquarius. You guys are secret weirdos. Subconsciously, you want to just rebel against all things that are normal. Okay. And, even though it might seem like a lot of the Pisces risings follow a very like spiritual path, or an artistic path. And that 12th house of Aquarius has to be integrated in the sense that subconsciously, you're actually a very detached person, right? It might not come off like that, but subconsciously, you're actually a little cold. That is a shadow of Aquarius. And so you have to be honest about that you can be a little bit cold, that you can be a little bit detached, even though it appears you're giving off the vibe that you are this very endlessly compassionate, emotional person, but you're not. This is the paradoxes of the 12th and the 1st house. So you have to accept that about yourself and really bring out your humanitarianism. Okay? You have to remember it's about remember your vision, right? And in the 12th house, subconsciously, you do want it to serve humanity. But that Capricorn 11th house, a lot of what you bring to the world is actually a business. It's more of a business model than a humanitarian model, but that can still be used. Capricorn's a builder. So you could build something extremely impactful for the world that is very sustainable. But if that subconscious 12th house is not integrated, it can actually be something that harms humanity. Or it can actually be something where you don't care about humanity secretly. Right? Subconsciously, you actually don't care about other people. And so that has to be integrated, because that 12th house Aquarius, you can have the most interesting, unique ideas and a unique frequency you bring to the world where, again, you will be a paradox. You're not going to be understood by everybody, but you can greatly, greatly spiritually impact the world, or through your ideas, right? Through your unique style of living. And so we get to some of these examples. Had to use another Kardashian because it's just so easy. Kourtney Kardashian. She is such a quintessential Pisces rising. No one really understands her. She is very paradoxical, right? Like if you've ever watched the shows or listened to her, she's so paradoxical. Like a lot of things she does like doesn't make sense. She's always kind of having feuds with the family. She is very judgmental. That's something that comes out a lot. She is very critical, especially of her family, but she is also a chameleon when it comes to relationships. And every relationship she's in, she morphs into that person. She doesn't have a sense of self. That's what I notice about her. She's a 9 degrees Pisces ascendant, so a Sagittarius degree. They talk a lot about on the show where Kourtney doesn't want to work. She has a lot of kids. She's remarried now, and she's kind of like, they would always joke, even from the earlier seasons, how like she just didn't want to work and was kind of lazy, right? And again, this comes with like that Leo 6th house, Sagittarius 10th house. There's not a clear like motivator here for working other than like, I just want to be in joy. I want to do things when I feel like it kind of thing. And she really encapsulates that. And of course, I think gets extremely lost in relationships to a very detrimental point. That's just my observation, right? She is ruled by ancient ruler is Jupiter at 29 degrees Cancer, 5th house. I think this is why she, if you ever watch the shows, she's obsessed with her children. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but the way it comes off is weird. Like she is someone who's constantly saying like, oh, I can't work because I just want to focus on my kids. I just want to be at home. I just want to be with my husband. Like she has no kind of balance in life where the conversation is always about her kids, but it makes sense because she has Jupiter at the 29th degree. It's a critical degree. So I think this is actually, she knows on some level, this is where her focus needs to be. Now, her modern ruler is Neptune, 20 degrees Sag, 10th house. She doesn't really know what she wants to do, what her, like, purpose is in life. She's very, like, jumps from one thing to the next. I think that for her, it doesn't really matter. It's not that serious. And she kind of really embodies that, where there's a confusion for her around what she actually wants to do, what her compass is actually pointing her to. I think, her recent brand she's done for the past few years, I think is kind of on par for her. It's like a wellness brand, 7th house Virgo. Other people are kind of attracted to her and engaging with her through that 7th house through the supplement world, which is very Virgoian. So I think that works well for her. It's just going to be if she can be consistent with it. I think her ultimate goal is to find what her truth is, what her vision is, and to really act upon it, right? Another one here is Ellen DeGeneres, another 9 degree Pisces ascendant. She's also very confusing. And of course, in recent years, there's been a lot of stuff about her. So again, she kind of comes off as this quirky, funny, very down to earth kind of gal. But then it comes out that actually she's super rude to her staff. She's been super rude to guests on her show. That's the Aquarius 12th house. There's this hidden almost hatred for humanity that can appear. I'm not saying for all Pisces risings this is true, right? I'm talking deep shadow here. And I think that comes out with her. She is ruled by her Jupiter in Scorpio 8th house. A lot of stuff came out about her regarding PDFs, files, some weird stuff, right? Jupiter, Scorpio 8th house. There's a lot of hidden secrecy here. There can be deep corruption, deep nefarious stuff can occur here, right? Then she moved away to Europe to kind of get away from all of it. We can see she's declining in health very rapidly. That's interesting. Now her modern ruler is Neptune in Scorpio 8th house. And her north node is also in Scorpio. These are all conjunct, by the way, in the 8th house. So she's actually here to transform that darkness, to really do a deep dive into spiritual healing in that house, really like disentangling maybe from things that have been inherited, like abuse, or some sort of traumas. Like there's a lot of trauma here. And so actually she was meant to really dive into that. And so I think when that's avoided, right, it starts to leak out. Okay. So the 8th house, like I said, isn't subconscious. It is unconscious. That is the difference between the 12th house and the 8th house. The 8th house is unconscious. It is the things we feel inside, the things we sometimes do and focus on where it's unconscious. It's coming from something within, whether that's a deep desire that we haven't allowed ourselves to feel, whether that is suppressed trauma or wounding, whether those are triggers that we don't know why they're there or where they come from. Like I said, angels and demons. It can also be this deeply divine power that we have, this incredible gift that we just haven't really come to terms with. So the 8th house requires a deep dive. We have to make the unconscious conscious. But when you don't handle the 8th house, it will leak into the 12th house of the subconscious. The subconscious is a lot harder to reach than the unconscious. Okay. The only shift between being unconscious and conscious is awareness. Once you have awareness, it's no longer unconscious. So this is why the 8th house rules things like psychiatry, psychology, therapy, somatic healing. Once we are aware of something, it's not unconscious anymore. Now we're actively processing it. Now we're actively dealing with it. The subconscious in the 12th house is much harder to reach. Awareness itself doesn't get to it. So the 12th house requires a lot more integration. This is why it's the house of Pisces. We have to almost go through a transcendental spiritual journey in the 12th house to really uncover the subconscious, right? This is spiritual. This is cellular. It's different. And so what happens also is if we don't work with the 12th house at all, the 8th house leaks into the 12th house and it comes out as projections. It comes out as the subconscious actually starts manifesting things in the world to try to show us what's going on. And I think Ellen, this is just my personal feeling, didn't deal with the 8th house. That's a heavy load. There is some heaviness and possibly some darkness there. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean things that have been denied, suppressed, unhealed, and it leaked into the 12th house, right, of Aquarius, and it came out as this hatred for humanity, which ended up being manifested as her possibly being involved in all this nefarious stuff. And quite frankly, has been known and been shown to actually like be very mean to people. That's a shadow of Aquarius, the coldness that I was referring to. Now, here's another example of someone who I feel, so those were kind of shadow examples. I have another shadow example, but let's talk about somebody who I feel was so true and aligned to their Pisces rising, which was Whitney Houston. She was an 8 degrees Pisces ascendant, such a sensitive soul. I mean, she really gave the world like a voice that can never be recreated, right? Pisces can be music. And I think she was just like such a beautiful soul in the world, right? She was ruled with the ancient ruler by Jupiter in Aries' first house. She also had her moon in Aries in the first house and Chiron in Pisces in the first house. So she was strong. She kind of exerted this very powerful, right? Her voice was super powerful with the Aries parts of that in the first house. And she had this magical, just beautiful energy, like an earth angel that she really emanated, right? So her ancient ruler of Jupiter really wanted her to expand into her sense of self, into her true identity. Okay, now she was an 8-degree Pisces rising, 8 degrees Pisces rising, which is a Scorpio degree. So that can be challenging because obviously she went through a lot of things in life. Abuse. We know she died by overdose. We don't know if that's the real story, but she experienced a lot of heaviness and a lot of abuse. Now her modern ruler, Neptune and Scorpio in the 8th house. So I think that could have been addiction. We don't know if that's the full story, but that's what was presented. Neptune and Scorpio in the 8th house can definitely lead to addiction because there's a heaviness there. Remember, Ellen also has Neptune and Scorpio in the 8th house. There is abuse. There is trauma. There is wounding here. There are deep-seated things that need to be unraveled here. But also there's an incredible kind of psychicness here. There's an incredible alchemization that occurs with Neptune, right? Ultimately, Neptune is the vision. Neptune is the spiritual healer. So I feel, again, we don't know any of these things, but what they've presented as drowning from an overdose is very Neptune and Scorpio 8th house coded, right? But I feel she was an embodiment of a Pisces rising. I think she was so angelic and really brought a beauty to the world. And I think sometimes darkness is attracted to the light. And so that's one thing about Pisces risings is, again, it's a paradox because they can be consumed by what other people project onto them or by getting pulled into other people's worlds. And it's very hard. They have to stay very grounded in who they are and their vision and their world. So yeah, I just think she was a beautiful example of that. She really was a gift to the world. Last example is Deepak Chopra, another one in the files, another one doing weird shit. Again, so for all my Pisces risings, because of course the Pisces risings that are going to listen to this, you're all angels, okay? And you have to please develop your sense of self, develop your own vision. Be very careful about how you use the power of that Pisces first house. Remember, Neptune, Pisces, is the mood, the vibe. It is influential. You easily influence others at the same rate that you are influenced by others. So use it for good and have those proper boundaries, okay? You guys can really impact the world in such a dramatic way. Deepak Chopra touted himself, right? 17 degrees Pisces ascendant, Gemini degree. He talks a good game. He presented himself as this like spiritual guru. Lo and behold, that 12th house of motherfucking Aquarius came back to bite in the ass again. The subconscious was not integrated, so the shadow leaked out, which is actually hatred of humanity. Because you cannot do what you did and love humanity. That impossible, right? Ancient ruler, Jupiter in Scorpio, 8th house. Okay, so you will see a lot of Pisces risings because of Placidus have Scorpio energy that falls into the 8th house. You have to deal with this. You have to make the unconscious conscious. Okay, Jupiter in Scorpio, 8th house. Okay, that's the same as Ellen DeGeneres. I don't know. We see a theme. We see a theme emerging here. Now, he also has his Sun in Libra, Mercury in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio, and Chiron in Libra, all in the 8th house. So he has an 8th house stellium. Again, didn't make the unconscious conscious. You can talk the best game. You can spout all of the spiritual knowledge in the world, but the 8th house will always show you if you've really done the work. If you've really done the shadow work, your 8th house is a powerhouse. Same with the 12th. If you've really dove into getting in tune with spirit and working with the subconscious, right, in some way, shape, or form, which can be even through meditation, journaling, prayer. Like those are very simple ways to get in tune with subconscious. The 12th house becomes this powerful magnetic house. Those houses will always show if you've done the work or not. Okay. So I think again, Sun in Libra, Chiron in Libra, he comes off as this really likable, charming person, but behind the scenes, something completely different. And that is very 8th house coded. Now his modern ruler, Neptune in Libra, 7th house. Remember, Neptune in Pisces is influential. Okay, so what I want you guys to do as Pisces risings, look at your Jupiter, because I think the ancient ruler is important, right? This is going to tell you what you actually are seeking in this life. Like it gives you some sense of the vision, right? It's some sense of what you want to focus on, where the vision is. But then looking at your modern ruler of Neptune is really going to show you also of like where there's confusion with that vision, where you might need to find some sense of groundedness and some sense of discernment here with that vision, and also realize this is where you're very influential. So we have to be very mindful, right? I don't like that word, but whatever, mindful of our influence upon others. Okay. So with all of those examples, we see where the influence was not used properly. Deepak Chopra, Neptune, 9 degrees Libra, that's a Sagittarius degree, 7th house of relating to the world, relating to others. He influenced others because Libra is charming. Libra is easy to like. Everyone loves Libra. The shadow of Libra is they can put on a really good mask. They can put on the best persona ever. Okay. 9 degrees Sagittarius degree, right? He's like preaching, he's sharing his beliefs, he's sharing all this kind of like spiritual wisdom. He was known worldwide. He basically got everyone to love him. Neptune in Libra, this is where his influence wasn't clear, wasn't used properly. It could have been used for the greater good, right? But Jupiter, which is underneath the surface, is in Scorpio in the 8th house, and he didn't integrate it. He didn't use it properly, so it becomes distorted through the Neptune, right? We can see these through all the examples. Jupiter, for Kourtney Kardashian, for instance, Jupiter at 29 degrees Cancer, 5th house, that is her natural kind of vision for her life. Is she cares about her children, she cares about family. That's where she's finding her happiness, that's where she's finding her passion. But at that 29th degree, it can become so overblown, right, that it becomes distorted with Neptune and Sag in the 10th house, where she can't stick to anything. She can't really accomplish anything because there's I don't know that it's a laziness. I think it's a lack of motivation, a lack of caring, about really bringing a vision to the world, and just kind of like, whatever I feel like doing when I feel like doing it, right? It becomes a little bit distorted. Same with Ellen, Jupiter and Scorpio in 8th house wasn't dealt with. So it comes out in the Neptune and Scorpio in the 8th house. Okay. It then became super distorted with like weird, very weird, hidden, secretive shit, right? Whitney Houston, I think, is the only example of somebody who did it right. Jupiter in Aries, 1st house, found her voice, found herself, found her autonomy and identity. But because I think what happened is engaging with very toxic, abusive relationships, it became distorted. Neptune and Scorpio, 8th house, addiction, escapism. Okay. We just see the pattern here. So for my Pisces risings, you guys are huge influences on the world. Huge. And now that Neptune is out of Pisces, there should be some relief, where now Neptune is in Aries and you're getting very clear on who you are. Your vision is coming into clarity, and just be very aware of how influential you are. And so really take a look at that Jupiter and Neptune, and, really utilize the power of being a Pisces rising to expand in your spiritual disciplines, expand in your knowledge, your wisdoms, your learning, whatever your art, whatever you're passionate about, and realize that you can influence an entire collective. So figure out what your vision is, figure out what it is you actually believe in, right? Because you still kind of have that Jupiter ancient ruler. Figure out what you believe in. What is your vision to the world? What do you want to see in New Earth? And then you fucking deliver it. You deliver it through your being, through your art, through your ideas, through your sense of self. You bring that to the world. You are a walking magnet, and you can magnetize everybody towards the vision and the direction that you see. So I love you guys, and I'll be back soon with some new videos. We're going to start talking about some of the major transits coming up, and lots of other cool kind of archetypal stuff about astrology. So love you guys, and love to all my Pisces risings.